Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's midday Western U.S. regional forecast video brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. I want to begin first by just looking at the last 72 hours of total accumulated precipitation, because last week in our last Friday's update, we did talk about some precipitation that was moving in through this quarter. Remember the very light rain that was coming through there? We also knew that there was this upper level trough that would be sitting here in parts of the Pacific Northwest, and out of that trough, we not only saw quite a bit of shower and thunderstorm activity across the state of Montana, getting into Wyoming and then back into parts of Idaho. But just in the day yesterday on Monday, some very strong thunderstorms producing quite a bit of heavy rain moved north out of Oregon and into Washington. Now, aided by the lift of some of the mountains in the nearby area, we did get some heavier precipitation. As a consequence of that, because of more storms we're watching again today, we do actually have a region right here in the Pacific Northwest that is under a flash flood watch. Over some of the burn scars we have in this area, we could very quickly develop a flash flood situation. So let's talk first about that rain in that area. So I'm going to go straight to my high resolution rapid refresh model here. And we're going to be looking starting at 6 a.m. early in the morning on Tuesday here, animating through midday on Wednesday. And we can see that we have a boundary, a front sliding to the south. Watch it again. See it right there? And as it moves through in the overnight hours of tonight, Tuesday night, getting into Wednesday morning, we're going to see those thunderstorms along that line. So you can see some locally heavy rainfall in parts of Washington state getting over into Idaho and then definitely into Montana. So we're continuing with this bigger thunderstorm threat across parts of the Pacific Northwest, some locally heavy rainfall. And that's primarily because the flow pattern in the upper levels of the atmosphere hasn't really broken away from having that trough sitting there. And this is what I'm talking about. This trough sitting right in through here, well, as we come out from under that trough, so here's the main axis, this corridor in through here has great upper level support for producing thunderstorms. So again, if I just trace out the flow of the jet stream, it's doing something like this right now. And that particular position of that trough is what's keeping our temperatures a little bit cooler, but also very active in Washington, Northern Oregon, Idaho, and Montana. Meanwhile, over California, the flow is very weak. We're not seeing too much in the way of any significant weather right now in California. But this particular pattern, we want to understand where it's going in the near term because its evolution and change is going to be very important for us. And we are going to be watching just off the West Coast at this feature. This is an area of higher atmospheric pressure that is very close to Alaska. It's deep. It goes extending deep into the atmosphere. And south of it, there is a region here. I'll try to label it with an L. That is where our upper level low is. Now, this high over low pattern, so the high is here, the low is to the south of it. That high over low pattern brings a very interesting flow off of the west coast of the United States. And what it's going to do is it's going to change our trough ridge pattern as we progress through the next couple of weeks of July. And let's talk about it to see what it's going to do in terms of temperatures and then precipitation. So let's click play. We can see that by the time we get through, watch it again here. We can see that by the time we get through, Wednesday evening, we have a broader trough that's extending right in through this area, straight out of almost the western side of the Hudson Bay all the way through California. And now we're going to see what that does to temperatures in the near term, but the real player is right back here. This ridge, like I said, over that low. So watch what happens with time. Ready? We see that as we progress into the end of the week, this is now Thursday into Friday and then into Friday night and Saturday morning. Look, we have that high over low pattern retreated a bit west, is now setting up here between Alaska and Russia, and now the low is south of the Aleutian Islands. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means this, as we progress past the 7th and 8th, see the trough developing there? That trough will be very temporary because a ridge begins to build in around the 9th, 10th, and 11th. And we seem to get ourselves into a flow pattern that's doing something like that. And that flow pattern is going to feature this sizable ridge. Now, it's a pretty complicated pattern in the near term because, remember, going back here, we've got this really highly amplified high over low pattern here. This is our negative East Pacific oscillation. This is our dominant feature in the Pacific Ocean. Now, I dig into that first so I can show you where we're going in terms of precipitation. Now, look, where that trough is, look at the wet weather in through here, and where the ridge is sitting, look how it's dry. Now, because that basically comes into the Pacific Northwest, we have a corridor that stretches right in through here of wetter weather. At least that's what the European ensemble is suggesting. What about the GFS? Same thing. See it? So Montana, you are going to be the beginning of what we're going to call the upper level northwest flow pattern we're going to be in that's going to stretch all the way across the Corn Belt over the coming days. Now, come down through California, you notice you don't see a precipitation anomaly one way or the other. Remember, though, it's dry this time of year in California, Nevada. That's very, very normal. So it's really going to be a focus on the Pacific Northwest in terms of any sort of interesting precipitation patterns in the near term. So let's just go straight here. The next week's worth of precipitation, look, it's this corridor right in through here where things are staying wet. So that means Montana, a lot of shower and thunderstorm activity coming up. Parts of Washington, the same, but very dry inside of this region here, which is normal, again, for this time of year. Now let's take a look at this. Over the next 5 days, what are our temperatures doing? Well, 0 through 5 day forecast here, because in general, we continue to see troughing in this area. We're going to be hanging on to near average to slightly cooler than average temperatures. But by the time we get to the 6 to 10 day time period, we do start to see a warm up happening along the West Coast. But look at this, 11 to 15 day. This is by the time we get a ridge building here and a broader trough over the eastern half of the country. We're going to be seeing warmth from western Texas all the way up the west coast of the United States, so much above average temperatures. That's the GFS on the left. The European model is over here on the right, and it says a very similar picture. So by mid-month, we're going to go back into a very warm pattern, and that's why I started off by showing you that upper level flow pattern. So let's take a look at some of the high temperatures just over the next week. So starting us out in the day on Tuesday, watching specifically in the Pacific Northwest, Snake River Valley, middle to upper 80s, but coming back over the Columbia Basin here, we're talking about temperatures that are going to be in the upper 70s and lower 80s. Meanwhile, Oregon, a lot of 70-degree high temperatures throughout the day on Tuesday. Pressing play, let's get over here into Wednesday. Our high temperatures, again, still on the cooler side. You know, we can get some extreme heat in June and early July, and we're not yet seeing it because of that upper level trough that's hanging out. But by the time we get into Thursday, we can see that our high temperatures here for the 4th of July getting into the middle to upper 80s in the Columbia Basin, and in the in the low 80s in the in the Snake River Basin here. And look, as we progress toward the end of the week, that's where we start to get Friday into Saturday into Sunday, some warmth returning. So we can see some much higher temperatures for our weekend. So we're on a cooler trend through the beginning of the week, and we're warming up toward the end of it. That's what we're seeing in the Pacific Northwest. What about California? Well, still beautifully pleasant weather here in the day on Tuesday. A lot of upper 80s, lower 90s in the Central Valley. But as I take you out here, let's get this. This is now Wednesday, hanging on to those beautiful temperatures. Thursday for your 4th of July, still looking really good here, but watch the end of the week. There's Friday in the San Joaquin Valley getting into the middle to upper 90s. Saturday, now we've got a lot of upper 90s, triple-digit heat in places, and then all the way up in the Sacramento Valley as well. Now let's go into Sunday. So again, warming trend for the weekend. See it? Still staying in the mid to upper 90s, some triple-digit heat in places. And we get all the way out here to next Monday, and we still see that same picture hanging on. So cool start, warming up as we progress forward. Now, what does that mean in terms of our evapotranspiration rates? Well, we're seeing here the next 7 days. We can just go to California first. We're going to see in the valley here some locations evaporating between 2 and 3+ inches. Of course, it's higher when you get down here into the desert. But in the San Joaquin Valley, we're talking evaporation rates primarily right around the 2-inch rate. Over the next week, some locations getting into the upper almost 3-inch rate there. Going a little bit farther north, well, we have quite a bit of rainfall in Montana, so we're not too worried about evaporation rates there. But Snake River Valley, same thing. We're picking up about 1.5 inches to 2.5 inches of evaporation there. And even up here into parts of Oregon and Washington, in the basin there, in the valley, we're looking at the same kind of numbers. So these are not as bad as it could be. And as a consequence of the way that this spring has evolved, we've not really seen major widespread fire threat at this point. But we are now at the time of year that we have to get very concerned about that. So as a quick tease to my video that'll be coming out tomorrow for the long range for the whole United States, I want to show you this. What I just circled was the date. This is the last week of July. Notice that the atmosphere, according to the European model, is trying to feature a ridge that runs up the west coast. So the flow pattern's doing something a bit like this, keeping a trough here And that's why we see much warmer than average temperatures as we progress through the second half of July, as being forecast by the European model right now. Now, with that, we always increase our evapotranspiration rates, which has me concerned as we just progress through summer, which is very normal, that we're going to start to see a bigger increase in our fire threat moving forward, just because it is getting into the normal summer pattern of bringing in some pretty high temperatures, high evaporation rates. We might be aiding that with the development of a ridge in this area. So that is something we're going to watch together throughout the coming weeks. I'll keep you updated as often as I possibly can. And with that, I hope you have a great rest of your day. We at Nutrien Ag Solutions hope you look forward to all of our weather forecasts coming out this week at my.nutrienagsolutions.com. Have a great week. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you.